Good morning, everybody.
Hello. We are pumped.
Yes, we have Jane Pike here today with us from Confident Rider, and we are so very excited to have her here. We are going to be talking all about mindset and connection.
Yes, it's going to be phenomenal. We're so excited to hear what she has to say. A little bit about Jane before we get started and bring her in here. She's really worked as a qualified and successful equestrian mental skills and mindset coach quite some time now. She's both worked with competitive riders and non-competitive. And I'm going to have to read this next part because the girl's got skills, mad skills. Hold on. There we go. So she has U.S. and New Zealand board approved coach. She's a certified mental skills coach, a registered NLP coach and practitioner, timeline therapy practitioner, certified master of hypnotherapy. Keep going. Certified equine assisted learning facilitator, a mind coach on Ask the Experts panel for New Zealand Horse and Pony magazine, and regularly contributing writer as well as coach for the UK site of eVenting. Her articles and writing have also been published in Horse and Pony, New Zealand Dressage Bulletin, and the UK magazine, Horse Magazine, just to name a few to start off with. She's also a mental skills coach for Robin and Warwick Schiller, too, which is the Team Australian reining team at the 2018 Equestrian Games. Holy Toledo. So when she's not, oh, sorry, I'm smacking the mic. When she's not doing all of this, she's hanging out with her horses as well in, and we're going to try to say this, Dunedin? Is that it? Is that how you say it? Dunedin. Oh, okay. Yes. Not even in the South Island of New Zealand.
So everybody help us in giving her a warm welcome, and welcome, Jane.
Thank you so well. I feel like I'm at the Oscars. I'm like, thank you everyone. Yes.
Yeah. We are so excited to have you here today. So I think even just to get started, maybe you want to tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, other than the numerous things that I just listed about how amazing you are.
Oh, thank you. Going to get hot flushes. I'm Jane. And I'm a mental skills coach. I think that's the best way of saying that I really help riders and actually non-riders as well. So it might be a situation that you're just working with your horse on the ground currently or working towards riding. But basically my thing is helping people get their head in the right space to do what they want to do with their horses. So I'm not a horse trainer. I'm the rider side of things. I'm the people trainer.
Nice. Which is essential too, because I think the riders a lot of time need just as much training as the horses.
Yeah, absolutely.
Intention is everything. And I know that if you don't have that mindset, it makes it so hard to, accomplish anything, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really essential to look to ourselves first when it comes to being able to be reliable and consistent partners to our horses. So it's a really not only important, but instrumental, from my point of view, piece of the pie, definitely.
Absolutely. And we forgot to mention too, if anybody wants to comment and ask questions, please feel free. I see we have a couple of people in here already. Libby, hello, darling. And Sheila, we've got in here who's new to the group. Welcome, welcome.
Hi, Sheila. Hi, Libby.
Fabulous.
Yes, so feel free to comment with any questions you may have for Jane, and we will pass. Can you see the comments or no? We'll pass.
I can. They just flash up there, yeah. And I just saw that someone said they were interested in the certification program, and you should be because it's fabulous. So, yes, get on board with that. Yes, this works both ways.
So if anyone out there is loving this, or you have that horse mindset, or you have a horse in your life, or you're looking at getting a horse in your life, this is a fantastic video to share out to just really help bring that horse welfare piece together with your mindset and the connection piece. So share, and let's get this out to as many people as we can.
Yes. And there we go. So how did you get into all this?
Oh, gosh, this is such a long-winded answer, so I'm going to try and condense it down. I grew up riding and competing horses in Australia, and my mum is really horse mad, so I got the bug from her. And both my parents were competitive athletes. They were runners, professional runners. And so mindset was always part of the conversation in our family and part of the fascination that I held for the longest time. And then in my 20s, I branched off and, you know, the saying that Steve Jobs has made popular, which is you can't connect the dots by looking forward, you can only connect the dots by looking back. That's kind of a good summary of my career trajectory. So I did emergency aid relief overseas. I worked as a worker in the Middle East and in the Indian subcontinent, and so got a lot of trauma-based training. And as part of that side of things, became really interested in how we cope with pressurized situations. So not only situations where we're placed under, you know, fairly dire circumstances that most of us would hope to not be in, but also, you know, why is it that some of us are more resilient than others? Why is it that we can deal, some of us are really able to cope well with circumstances where the pressure comes on and some of us crumble? Like, what is that piece in there that makes that happen? And naturally, in between that, so we're talking about a sort of a span of a decade here, I studied yoga therapy and became really interested in different breath work and techniques and elements of that side of things, that side of psychology training, I guess. And then I decided to solidify and kind of condense that all together with performance psychology training. So it all came together. It seems really disparate, but it all came together in this beautiful alchemy that I brought back in with my horses once I got back into that and sort of settled down in New Zealand permanently in my 30s. And it just seemed, although at first glance, especially if you're a non-horsey person, it can seem really separate. You know, why is the psychology side of things, how is self-development and the mental framework and the emotional framework you're operating from, how does that relate to horses? But I think for any of us really that have been in that relationship for any period of time, you see how actually you are fundamental to your horse's ability to be happy and relaxed. And
even with the breathing, with the yoga training, you were saying, like, it automatically gives you that initial, I see how that goes in.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, too. Yeah, everything has to come together.
Totally. So I think I was one of those people I was sort of desperate to know what I should be at some point. Like a lot of my friends, from school had a really linear career path. They went to school and then they went to university and they kind of followed that path. And I felt like I should be doing that as well. So I felt really inadequate for a period of time. And even though when I look back, I did a lot of really cool stuff. But I think the basis for that is, and this is a whole different conversation, you know, at school, generally we get funneled into a way of thinking. And for me, I thought I wanted to do law and I worked really hard and got into this very prestigious course. And after 6 weeks, I sat there and I was like, I don't want to do this. This is horrendous. Like, and it just was the first time that I'd actually thought about what it was that I was going to do. So I had a little Mitsubishi Colt, which is like a tiny little jelly bean of a car. And I packed that up and drove 2 states across Australia home in the middle of the night, much to my parents' horror. And then, I ended up where I am now. So, yeah.
Oh, I think that funnel piece, though, is really important because that is something that a lot of us get stuck in is, okay, to grow up, you go to school, you go to college, you get married, you have a job, you have babies, like that's your lifespan. And I think that really relates to how we work with our horses in a lot of ways too.
Totally.
Funnel with, you're supposed to do this. This is how you do this. You back up a horse.
Yeah.
Like this is how we train. Whereas there's so many other ways of thinking that could be better off for the welfare of ourselves and our horses, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I know Carrie talks about this piece a lot. I watched a Facebook Live with her recently where we're so afraid of the unknown. You know, we're so afraid of uncertainty, I guess, and lack of reliability. And I think that's what stops a lot of us from creating our own way or creating our own path in any sense with our horses and professionally and personally, because we feel like if we don't have that certainty, then the outcome potentially will be negative, you know, that there's only this sort of black hole. But actually, when you step through that door, it's not like that. And I think that's where having a tribe of people or a group of people around you that have your back and where you can cultivate the self-belief that you need, because sometimes you're the only one that will have your back in the beginning. You know, and it's only after you have a level of success, and often that can be financial or that can be competitive success if you're talking about horses, that people go, wow, that's amazing. How did you do that? But in the beginning, they're like, wow. It's definitely fascinating.
We have a cool comment from Sheila here too.
Yes.
So what is it which makes some more resilient? I am a more resilient person, and I'm choosing to better understand those who are not as resilient and how I may help them become more resilient. And that might not be a short answer question, but
Yeah. Well, in two words, no. I think that resilience comes from having a healthy sense of worthiness and an understanding that no matter what happens to you in the external world in terms of the results that you might currently be experiencing or what it is that's going on for you, that you are 100% worthy of being here, you're 100% worthy of love and support, and that you are good enough. That is the baseline that you start from. And if you have a permeable sense of worthiness, if you can think of it that way, so if you think of worthiness as the platform that you spring from, if this is kind of a shaky foundation, then you take experiences and you translate them as evidence to prove to yourself about either your sense of worthiness or your lack of worthiness. So for instance, if something happens externally, maybe you lose your job or something goes wrong with your horse, or any number of situations that arise, you can take that and say, okay, well, that shows me that I need to be doing something else, for instance, and I need to go in this direction. Or you can take that and go, oh, I knew this always happens to me. I'm not good enough. I deserve this because I'm X, Y, and Z. And so when you're operating from that framework, the decisions that you make are different. The amount of effort that you invest in something is different. And as a consequence, the result is different. And so you reinforce that cycle through those two things. If you have a healthy sense of worthiness, then you make proactive and empowered decisions for yourself. You might not get a result in the first instance, but you keep investing effort to get that result. And so then you reinforce this idea that I can do it, I'm good enough. And the opposite also occurs. It might be that you make a decision that actually, what's the point? I'm just going to sit on the couch and do nothing. So your level of effort reflects the result. And then that reinforces the cycle where you essentially prove to yourself whether you're capable of it or not. But the missing piece is always that you are self-determining, whether it feels like that or not. And I completely recognize that some of us have, different resources available to us and different levels of support which impact that, and different backgrounds that we come from that have allowed us to feel that in different ways. But regardless of the baseline, it is possible to cultivate that at any point. Yeah.
100%, because we all come from those different places that we're a result of our lives, up to a certain point, but it's our choices that we make after that really help us to figure out who we're going to be in our future, right? Rather than determining.
Absolutely.
Well, even Todd and Tanya have a good follow-up question. How does one know the boundary between being resilient and not knowing when to stop or slow down?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, these are so multifaceted because they're quite individually dependent. I think you can only know by getting it wrong sometimes. You can only know what your boundary is by actually breaking it and then realizing, well, that really didn't work for me. And so part of it is like reframing mistakes and reframing what it means to actually try stuff and perhaps have it not go so well. Boundaries are a really interesting conversation because I think that for women especially, and I don't want to get too general like that, but I mainly have conversations with women, so this is perhaps where that thought process comes from. But we have really blurry boundaries, especially when it comes to being kind and being nice. We have these feelings like those two things mean that we need to bleed ourselves dry, or we need to just do everything that is required or asked of us. And actually having a healthy boundary means knowing what works for you and what doesn't. And saying no can be the kindest thing because it means that you are, I'm going to put it the other way. I had a conversation about this recently. It's like if you say yes to someone, but really you mean no, you're giving them kind of, can I say shitty? You're giving them a shitty deal because it's, is it the Oscars? No, we're giving them a shitty deal because actually we're not congruent. We're presenting something which is different to how we feel. And I don't want a yes from someone that's actually a no. I want a yes that's a yes. So Brené Brown has this really great line where clear is kind. Clear is kind. So if you're clear with someone, that is actually the kindest way forward. And I think with our horses as well, this bleeds through, where if we have really poor personal boundaries in our human relationships, often we have poor boundaries in our horse relationships, because we either anthropomorphize them to the point where, you know, we're not clear in our expectations. And so sometimes it's okay maybe if they come into our space, and then sometimes we're like, no, that's not okay. And so the rules aren't clear. And also that definition that we have for ourselves about what it means to be kind. You know, kind is, and I got this as well so much from my course in Sydney when I was doing the certification with Jane, as part of you guys, you know, the course that you guys offer. One of the little boys, he chose the word off the board at the end, and it was honesty. He chose, was it honesty or safe? And he said that his interaction with his horses, because they were 100% honest, that made him feel safe. And it's funny because you think you're doing everyone a favor by like maybe bending the truth, or, you know, trying to make it okay. But actually we feel really much better about things when people are just clear with us. Like,
well, and I even love it. Like if you watch the herd, for instance, the horses in the herd, they're clear with their boundaries. They're clear with their communication. You're not going to like beat around the bush and be like, maybe I don't want that. It's no, I don't want this.
Yeah. And I back to the horse welfare piece, that because I think we could talk about this boundary stuff for hours. But I was looking on your website, and you were talking about having those true partnerships with our horses. And I can see how this clarity piece and really being the leader, and I don't mean leader like CEO of a company, I mean like somebody being a leader of their own lives kind of thing. But I can see how that would go together. So how is it that you really work with that true partnership piece with us and our horses?
Well, the first element is, if you think about what partnership is where you both have a voice, and that voice is heard. So
that should be all partnerships.
Yes.
yeah. It's not, is it? That's the ideal. That's the ideal. And I've broken it down into two pieces. And I guess my passion is what I've coined or referred to as transformational horsemanship. I'm really interested in working with people that want that partnership. And as part of that process, recognize that they have to look to themselves first. That in order to be able to offer their horse a fair deal where they are reliable, where they're able to be worthy of trust, you know, from their horse, and where they're consistent in what it is they ask, so there's clarity there, they do the work on themselves first. And most of that comes through developing a process, you know, being able to recognize how it is you feel, being connected to yourself, so that that's part of how you operate, and then ensuring that what it is that you think, how it is that you feel, and what it is that you project in terms of what you're asking your horse is in alignment. And so at the end of the day, really your relationship with your horse is a representation of your relationship with yourself. You know, if you're lacking patience, if you're getting angry, then chances are, I mean, we know it's just never going to only happen in the arena or without, it's happening everywhere. So it's like a magnifying glass that we look through. And I guess the converse of that, or the opposite of that, is it's possible to have a transactional relationship with a horse where you use them to get a result. And, you know, like you might ride in competition, and this is where you see the disposable side of the horse industry, where if they don't meet the grade, or you're not able to produce a certain outcome with them, then it's not about them as an individual or a kind of conscious being. It's like, right, next, let's go, move on.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's not my bag. Yeah.
Where all those horses come after.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So cool.
I love that, though. Having that true partnership piece of really working together on something feels so much better. I don't know what a better way to say it.
Yeah, that's the heart piece. Hey, like that's
the purpose, the passion, and like just everything changes as soon as you have that partnership piece with your horse.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, totally. I think, and especially when it comes to competitive horse sports, it's gymnastics, you know, like if you have partnership, if you have the feeling, this is what I'm aiming for with my horse. I want the feeling, and I'm a pacifist, just to like, that you could go to war with your horse, you know, like that actually, if you needed to like go into battle, your horse would be there right with you and it would be okay. I kind of want that feeling. And if you have that partnership, really the rest is just gymnastics. It's like, actually, we need to run more, or we need to work on our trampolining skills, you know, like it's like how do we get those athletic pieces working so that now we can take it where we want to in terms of a riding discipline, but actually that partnership is the first piece.
Yeah. And the other question I had for you too is the mindset and emotional agility. Can you give us a little bit more info on what that really means and maybe how we get there?
Yeah. So just light questions. We just thought we'd just like, just some questions. Yeah.
And the next,
yeah, sure.
That'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll just keep it brief. I think mindset is the mental framework that you're operating from. And emotional agility is your ability to turn up the volume on your emotions and have them come down and move in the opposite direction in response to your environment, not in reaction to your environment.
Like
again,
or so.
Yeah, consciously, so that, you know, when you're in this interactive place with your horse, sometimes they present a really big energy to you. And what's required is for you to turn up the volume on your energy, and not that mean more aggressive, not that mean violent, but just bigger and more emphatic and more assertive, maybe more intentional. And so that is a demonstration of your emotional agility. You can start at this neutral point, but if you're required to be bigger and more assertive and take up more space, you can. And if you need to be smaller and tone the energy down, you can as well. And neither of those things are personal. Neither of those things mean that you're more this and less that. It just means I can do this if it's required and I can do that if it's required. And that's the emotional agility, I think, that is really essential, excuse me, as horse people and riders, but also we need our horses to be able to do that, to be able to turn up the volume, to have a little bit more pressure if they need to be, and then be able to self-regulate as part of that instead of getting to that explosion point. And the opposite, you know, that we need to be able to allow them to dial it down as well. I think my fascination I've morphed a little bit in the last 1 to 2 years, in that perhaps mental skills and mindset sort of feels quite like serious, and it is serious, but it feels quite I don't know, maybe a bit linear. But the way that I like to think of it is as a quadrant, where actually, if we want to be really wholehearted with our horses and show up in a full way, I think that it's not only our mental and physical intelligence that we need to develop, it's our emotional and intuitive intelligence. And those pieces need to be paid attention to, because if you are, well, for the most part, just the way that our culture is and the way that our school system is, logical intelligence is highly valued. You know, like being smart, being logical, being rational, working things out is what we've most honed in terms of our intellectual capacity. And our emotional side of things, our intuitive side of things is, I think at the moment, given a bit of a bad rap, it's seen as unreliable, or, you know, you can't trust your gut, or emotions are a bit washy and kind of, but actually those pieces are so important, and learning to be able to recognize your emotions and channel them effectively so that you're not suppressing an emotion in and trying to be calm, or, you know, trying to be happy when actually you're like, well,
I even love how you bring the science piece into it too, that there is the science portion of it. It's not just the emotional coffee and everything. There's science behind that.
Yeah. You know, I think that what I notice is conversations in the horse world, they take two different approaches. People are like, I really need to see the facts. Like, you're going to have to prove that to me. Show me the science behind it. And I'm like, well, that's great. But if you're purely factual, then you leave out the heart, and then you miss the artistry and the beauty, because that's really important as well. And then if you're only on the other side where you're like, well, I'm just about the meaning and what does that bring me, then you miss really important aspects such as biomechanics and the way that we learn and the way that we think. So you need both of the pieces together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're starting to get into a place now where it had been so linear for so long with just education, and this is how you learn. And But we're actually getting to a place now where people are starting to recognize that these soft skills, or the skills of being able to show emotion or communicate in a different way, those are starting to come up again now, because with all of this texting and everything else that's happening in the world, they're lacking.
Missing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So people are starting to think, well, maybe we do need those after all.
Yeah.
So true. And even when we're working with our horses, that if we only were to do one side of the coin or another, that's not authentic, right? Because our brain always want both things in there. So we have to be authentic with working with
and bring
them.
that balance in.
The balance.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think with the equine assisted, or the facilitation and the learning that you guys teach, the thing is with the intuition and with the emotions, it's not like it disappears. Like we're full beings in that sense, and our interactions with horses show that up, even if we're not conscious of it. So it's not like you can kind of flick one on and flick one off. It's like simmering beneath the surface regardless. And you're better off bringing it all to the party in a way that serves both of you and kind of up skills in that department. Otherwise you get to that stage where you're either repressed, or you get to that point where it like sort of like over expresses in a way that's not really healthy. Yeah.
The boiling point.
Yes. Yeah. How did that happen?
So one other question I want to ask you too is, how does the welfare of the horse, both like, I mean, from a healthy standpoint and a mental health standpoint as well for the horses, how does that work into all of this? Or how do you see that playing as a role in what you do?
Well, I think that, again, it comes down to that responsibility, that self-responsibility, to understand that in a training situation, we have a responsibility to be clear, we have a responsibility to be kind, and we have a responsibility to be reliable, so that we are consistent from one day to the next. You know, if you are working with your horse, that they know what to expect from you and you can build from that base. And we can only do that when we are clear about ourselves, you know, when we are actually conscious of what it is that we're presenting. And to me, if you aren't doing the work on yourself, if you don't understand how your thoughts are influencing your actions and your outcomes, if you don't recognize that you are in charge of your mood state and what it is that, you know, how it is that you can recognize, take what you need to from emotions and process them in a way that's really healthy, then you're bringing a whole lot of baggage to your horse. And chances are that's going to impact them negatively, whether you're intentionally meaning that to or not. It's not that people go out there with the intention of like being mean or cruel or anything like that. It's just like these things impact your ability to do all of those things, to be clear, to be kind, to be fair, and to be reliable. And that's what creates stress and tension and that feeling or lack of safety feeling in our horses, which of course is what they ultimately crave, I think. So yeah. The thing that really helps me is to think that, you know, actually being with horses is a series of small miracles. It's a miracle that they let us, catch them and hang out with them. It's it's the biggest miracle that they let us ride them. And it is such a miracle. Like, you know, we take it for granted, but like, it's just incredible that they allow us to be in this dialogue with them.
Well,
and I think
just especially being an animal, it's not
incredible. And so that is such an honor that I think we have a huge responsibility to be mindful of, and to, you know, it probably isn't their choice. I don't think that they don't like it all of the time, but it's, you know, they've got other things to do, like eat grass and hang out with their friends. And so, like, you know, if you're asking them to do certain things, then you at least need to be, you know, mindful of that fact that you have that responsibility to them to make it as pleasurable and as safe and as, you know, just consider them equally in the equation. Yeah.
And I love that you bring in about the piece that it's the responsibility, because it really is. Every person who has a horse has a responsibility to them. And I mean, even with what we do, we bring in people who have all sorts of baggage, I guess, for lack of a better term, coming with them all the time. And it's our responsibility to make sure that after they go, we allow our horses or figure out ways for our horses to be in a good mindset again and have that welcome back, so that they are feeling happy and they're not taking all of this on for themselves. And it is a responsibility that every single horse person should be taking with them all the time.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that even we need to empower ourselves to learn as much as possible about the psychology of horses, to be able to recognize what something means and ultimately to not take it personally, because that's where we all go so wrong at times. So it's like, he doesn't like me, or that means this. And, you know, then you get the labels, and that's where we sort of go down the rabbit hole of unhelpful thinking.
Yes, like unhelpful thinking. Well, this has been absolutely fantastic.
It's been incredible. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really showing us how this mindset plays such a huge role in the horse's welfare. And if you guys watching would love more information, type confident in the comments, and our Geordie bot will send you all of Jane's great information on her website, her membership programs, her ways to just keep moving forward with your horses in that partnership. And you're also going to get a free gift from us for it's a mindset mastery guide, and it's pretty incredible.
It's a party.
Yay!
But this has been so much fun, and I don't know about all of you guys watching, but I've learned a lot from you today,
so
Jane.
Much.
And how warm is it there? Is it warm?
It is summer. Yeah, I live on the South Island of New Zealand, so typically we're not like basking in really hot temperatures, but I feel quite defensive about the weather here, so I'm going to say, yeah, it's warm. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we envy you. Please send some our way because we are cold. But it has been so wonderful to have you here today, and I hope everybody types in confident, gets to know more about you. Anything else you wanted to say before we go, and just maybe your website too? Let people know.
Website www.confidentrider.online. Yeah.
Perfect.
And no, it's just been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to hang out.
Oh, well, we loved having you. So everybody go check her out. Jane is amazing, and see what she might be able to do to help you out with how you're going to have a better partnership with your horse as well. So thanks again for joining us. And next week, what do we got going on?
Oh, yes, we have the Schillers joining us. We have Warwick and Robin Schiller from Schiller Performance Horsemanship joining us to talk about making the wrong thing hard and the right thing easy.
Yes, good work.
They are fantastic.
They are. You know them too, don't you?
Yeah. They're
well.
my peeps. Yeah, they're amazing. Definitely need to tune in for that. Yeah.
I love it. So we will send out another bunch of blasts so everybody knows when to join us for next week. Or do you know the time yet?
Yes, next week it'll be Wednesday at 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time.
Perfect. So we will see all of you then. Thanks again, Jane. And have fun working with your horses, everybody.
Yay.